everyone to a new video. This is gonna be an exciting one because it's gonna be a very short video. At least that's what I say for each of them. But basically this is going to be like two-part videos, right? It's gonna be one where I show you the basics here and we create a small animation, and a second one where we create a little of a more complex animation. But here's the deal. This is what we will do right now. So right now my animation is rendering, but basically this is what we have to get done. And is, if you know Haikyu, which is a pretty famous anime at this point, we will try to recreate a scene. Actually, this scene. So, having this, can we actually do it without rigging, without weight painting and all that? Well, yeah, that's kind of the point of this whole video, but I will explain that in just a little bit. Now, before we actually get started, let me just remind you, please, there is one more day for you to grab the free procedural fence. I will try to put the link again, but it's much easier for you right now to get it from WeTransfer. I will put the link down in the description. It's free, it's for you guys, and you can use it in whatever you want. And also, please, I would like for you guys to help me get to the 500 subscriber mark. All right, so I really believe we can do that. And for that to happen, I would need you guys, if you're not subscribed, to subscribe to the channel because way more cool stuff will happen. Leave in a comment what else would you like to see in the future, and what else maybe you would like me to do. And also, of course, leave a like on this video and even share it if you feel like it. And if you don't feel like it, please share it still because it would help me out quite a bit. And with this being said, let's actually get started and go right into the video. So here is the deal. This video will concentrate on shape key. Alright, shape keys. Basically, animation is a very complex subject, right? So for animation, like for professional animation, you will need really good models. You'll need to know rigging, and you will need to learn how to weight paint, which we kind of already did, but for animation is a little more complicated. It's actually something I'm trying to do on a different project, but it's definitely not the easiest thing and not the most fun thing to do. But this video is not concentrating on that, right? So for those that want more complex animations and ones that will teach you how to rig and how to do weight paints and stuff, I would recommend you guys to check out this channel, Pierrick Picaut's channel. I hope I did not butcher that, but basically he is an amazing animator. So basically, just to understand how good he is, I'll show you this sequence. That's the intro for his new course, by the way. And yeah, if that doesn't make it impressive enough, basically the guy made the small series right there, like a beginning of an episode or a series in Blender. I think he is fantastic, and you should check him out if you didn't already. And he does actually explain animation very easily. Now, we're not gonna concentrate on that though.
Sorry.
Right? This is animation for absolute beginners, right, in Blender, and that's actually what we're going to do. And for that reason, we will actually try to copy one little scene from an anime called Haikyu, right? Again, we will use only shape keys, nothing too crazy. We will try to copy this scene. And for that, we will need this kind of reference. So basically, the moment the ball hits the field, right? And for that reason, we will actually need to open up Blender. Who knew? And to delete, of course, everything. Who would have guessed that? So let's get to part one of what we need to do, which is modeling, right? We just need to model really simple things. So nothing too crazy. We need a floor. So let's actually even call it that. Let's actually scale it up a little bit because we'll need it for later on. Also apply the scale. And now let's also introduce our main character in this scene, which is of course the UV sphere. Just put it up here and shade it smooth. Yes, this will not be, like super accurate in terms of scaling. I don't need like real scale for this. It just needs to work for our scene, right? So here is the way we're going to do this, right? We'll basically just need a timeline and the ball for the animation. Now, being an anime that we're trying to animate, we will also use some material animation. And if you don't remember how to do that, there are some intro explanation in my last video for the neon sign and how to animate materials. But basically what we first need to do is actually just play a little bit around. So first, this is the position that I want my ball to start at, right? And I do recommend you to press the auto key. Now what auto keying is doing is basically when I press G and then click, as you see, it actually set a keyframe for us. It knows this location, rotation, and the scale also. And as you can see, I did not apply the scale, which was a mistake, but now it's applied, now it's fine. So from this point on, press G, Shift I, and try to move the ball so that it hits the floor kind of about here. And of course, I made a mistake, which is I actually did it on the first frame, which is not okay. And this will be in 60 frames, okay? This is not gonna be a long animation at all. This is gonna be just like not 2 seconds, but like 4 seconds of animation. So you basically will frame it at 60 frames per second. Now animation in general doesn't do that. It does it at 24 frames per second, but I just wanna go a little bit crazy with this one. So G, Shift I, put it right where you would see that hits the floor, kind of in the center here. And as you can see, we now have the exact movement of our ball, which is fine, which is good, right? Now from here, we can actually go to the frame 240. And if you're thinking why 240 and why 120, it's because at 60 frames per second, this will mean from point A to point B when it hits the floor, this will be 2 seconds, and another 2 seconds from here till the end of the animation. And actually, let's actually make the end 240 frames. And now just G, Shift I, and get the ball, kind of here. And of course, we can see. Now, this is not a good way to do it. I don't know why it's doing it that way. Let's actually see the whole animation. I think it actually might be good. It's gonna be fine, and you'll see why. Because we will take frame 120 and actually put it to like frame 130. So basically it will rest a little bit and then will go up. So that's fine. That's practically okay. And actually I'm going to change this to what I previously had, something like this. It's a little more of a natural bounce of the ball. Okay, so we have this and that's pretty cool. And actually let me call this ball as well. Good. Now we basically have more or less the animation of the ball. Now let's select all the keyframes, and actually press right click, and in interpolation mode, choose linear, right? Now linear interpolation is basically better interpolation for our animation, usually anyway. It depends a lot on your type of scene, but for what we need is going to do pretty great. Now going back to frame 1, now the actual magic will start, because this is where shape keys will thrive, right? So we will have the ball right here, and we will add a shape key. So shape keys are right here. And what shape keys are, and I want you to think about it this way, is exactly like keyframes, right? Basically, you tell your body, this is how your geometry looks here, and afterwards, this is how it evolves. It's basically exactly like keyframe, point A and point B, you know, like the most important ones, and everything in between is gonna be interpolated basically. So what you wanna do is press on plus here, and as you'll see, you will have the basis, which is you know, the general form of our ball, which is pretty cool. And then we can go to frame 120, where we know this will actually hit the floor. And here we can add another shape key and call it floor hit. And here we can actually play around with the geometry of our body. And actually, let's activate proportional editing for this. Select the bottom part of our ball, S, and then try to make it so that it covers, so the circle of influence covers all the ball, and then just scale it up. And yes, it will look weird in the beginning, but trust me, it's okay. And now with this being done, select also the middle, S, Z, A, S, and Z, and make it all basically compress. And by the way, I do know that this is not how an actual ball would work, but if you have seen the anime, you know why I'm doing this, because they do love to exaggerate this. And now with this part here, basically you'll see the ball being at the exact same shape as it was. So it doesn't make sense because our shape is now different, is it? Well, not really, because as you can see here at the shape keys, the value of our shape key is actually 0. What does that mean? Well, pretty simple. You can actually increase the value, and when it gets to 1, it's exactly the animation we gave it. So basically, what we will need it to do is actually get a little down so that it actually hits the floor, right? And if you're wondering why I'm choosing it this way, is as you can see in the actual reference, when the ball hits the floor, it's flattening a lot. Again, this is not how an actual ball works, but it does work for our anime like, so why not? And yes, I am exaggerating even more than the anime, but I'm trying to kind of get the feel that they do get in here, right? Well, the whole ball distorts. That's kind of what I want, but just for the floor. All right, good. Having that out of the way, now actually let us look a little bit at the animation, because we can actually animate the shape keys as well, right? So let's set this to value 0 and animate this property, and then go all the way to frame 120 and say, no, the value is 1 now. Go to 130, the value remains 1, and we need to make sure that that actually stays there. And to 140, we're actually going to make it go back. So this is how our animation should be looking at this point, right? But here's the deal. I don't want, so our ball shouldn't deform this fast, right? It should deform maybe a little bit before we get here, but not this fast. And what I did is get this keyframe and actually put it till frame 70. So we will keep our ball basically, not that exact keyframe, sorry. At frame 70, just make sure the value is 0. If you move this, you're actually also gonna move the location. So basically, our ball will stay okay until it actually hits the floor. Yes, basically this will be a little before. And if you don't like that, we can just take this keyframe and actually move it until you're okay with it. Maybe frame 90 actually will do a much better job. Let's see. So our ball will come all the way up here, and then it will deform right there. Now again, it is a little bit before, but it's fine because I would like this exaggeration a little bit. Now one more thing that I want to do, and it's actually something that our reference will have, is again, it's the part right here. I want to make more or less this kind of distortions in our ball, right? So basically to get this, press Ctrl and 2, and that will bring us a subdivision surface modifier of level 2, and then just get 2 loop cuts right here, and Alt S, by the way, get rid of the procedural modeling, and Alt S, proportional modeling, sorry. I did realize that it made no sense to be procedural. And try to get it a very little bit out here, right? I don't need it to be, and I think here, these things are overlapping. All right, now it's good. I don't need it to be super obvious. I just need it to be a little bit there to kind of see it, but at the same time to be like, it's fine. All right, Alt S again, and I'm gonna do this for a little, for a few portions of our ball. And actually, because the impact is actually gonna be down here, this is where the distortion will have to look a little more serious. Like, you have to think about it. This is where the impact is. So basically, this is where we want our ball to seem that, oh, it actually really impacted it a lot. And yeah. Okay. And let's actually get one more right here. Right, I'll ask. And something like this. And now the ball seems pretty distorted already, which is pretty good. It's pretty fine, but we can actually do a little more to it, which is actually create some sort of random kind of distortion, which we can do with, of course, our trusted displacement node, actually modifier. And for this, you shall go to texture, and you can see that it will do it for the displacement, and choose clouds. And this is very aggressive. We don't need anything that big. So actually, let's increase the size here. And a 1.2 works pretty well, at least for me. But also, you have to play with the strength, all right? So the strength has to be, not too big. Maybe 0.15 would do. Right? It does look a little bit weird, but again, we need to simulate exactly the way they do it in the anime, which is with this kind of very weird distortion-like thing, because this actually helps a lot to prove the impact of the ball is crazy strong, right? Like when the characters hit the ball like this, you know that the impact is great, right? And let's take again a look at our animation. And as you can see, the displacement is also right here, and it already affects our ball, which we don't like. So first, we will actually set this to the strength to 0 and animate that. All right. And at frame 90, when it already starts to deform, right? Something like this, we will probably need to already do it. First, let's try it right here. So we already know that our ball will have to have this distortion in there, right? There is basically no other way to do this. But we can actually keep the strength to 0 all the way up here, and then actually take it from there so that it doesn't start, so it does this, right? And then it will pause just for that little like effect of like, oh, that is strong, that is crazy strong. And we can actually even exaggerate it a little bit and like keep it for 20 frames here, right? From out of the 60 frames, it's not gonna be that long. Like it's gonna be pretty insignificant place, but it's gonna affect it in a pretty good way. And now the first thing we will actually need to do, by the way, press save. I just pressed it by mistake, but I already do have this. Now, let's actually try to give some color to this thing, right? First, switch to cycles. And there's a reason I want you to do that. Now, we will use something that Eevee doesn't have. I mean, you can use the diffuse shader for Eevee. It basically kind of does the same thing, but I like the tune shader a little more. It's basically still just the diffuse. Now, what I'm saying by diffuse, you just give it the color, nothing else really. And let's call this ball. And then bring in the tune shader, the tune BSDF, and put it in. And then here we will need a wave texture. And with this, we will also get a very trusty color ramp. And press Ctrl and T to actually get our mapping and texture coordinate. Good, we're fine with that. Now, if you do look at the ball, it's actually having like, I don't know, sideways kind of lines. So that's kind of how we have to do it. Now, that is pretty easy to do. But first, let's actually change the color ramp to constant. And we will need to bring the white value all the way kind of up. It depends on how much we need this to be, how thick we want the lines. Also, let's get the scale a little bit down so that the lines are thicker. So let's change the Y to like a 45-degree angle. I think that will work. Let's also move to the part where we have the ball, you know, undistorted, unchanged, basically, so that it looks something like this. And now, of course, I would actually get the scale a little down because this is way too much still. But as you can see, these lanes are straight, so we don't really want that because in our reference, these are not straight lines. So actually what we do want to get is a distorted line, which thankfully this wave texture already comes with by default. And also we can make these lines a little thicker, or actually even get the scale a little down because that would help us out. And this looks way closer to what we actually needed. However though, I will like, so the detail here, let's keep it to 0. Actually, we can keep it to 0. Let's keep it like a 0.5 then, so that our distortion is not gonna be that crazy. Detail to 0, distortion will be able to be a little bit crazier because of it. Something like this will work pretty fine. And as you can see, we have the ball. We have kind of what we want. However, if we're changing now the colors here, this will not work perfectly fine. I mean, it will work, don't get me wrong. Let me actually show you. We can get these blue lines and these parts to just be yellow. And this will more or less be what we have here. However, I do want to make it a little bit different, which is I want to make like some black lines right here where we do have this. So the way to do this is actually by getting another wave texture, sorry. And then get the color ramp black and white, just like we had it previously. All the way like this, and then black. And this will have to actually, actually be connected to this because it has to be the exact same wave texture, really. So after we have the second wave texture, we can actually introduce a mix color node, right? And with this mix color node, what we need to do is actually just set one to A, the other one to B. And actually, if you can see, I did reverse these colors for the color ramp because in the white lines, we'll actually put our separation that I tried to create. Now also, we will need this right here with the colors we already set, but I deleted by mistake. So blue here, actually let me look at it so that I know the colors look okay. Let's something like this should do. All right, good. And now to get that, we actually will need another mix color node right here. And one of the things, one of the colors, so the color with black, with blue and yellow, should go into the first dot, which is the A node. And then this mix color will actually be the factorial. But as you can see, actually, let me connect it to everything. This doesn't work properly well because, first of all, we have no color in B. So just set the color to black here and everything should be fine. Now, of course, if you want to play around with it a little more and see if maybe there's something else that you think will look a little better, that is absolutely fine. But for now, I think this actually looks pretty good. Now, this is, as you can see, a little darker than it was when it actually came out of this one. And we can actually correct that, right? Just by bringing a color, right here, a brightness and contrast. And we can actually play around with it right here, right? So we can play around a little bit with the contrast and also with the brightness of our colors. Now, of course, we can have even more. So actually, if you go to color, you can actually improvise a lot more. So actually, we can also change the saturation a little bit. So the colors are way more saturated. And also bring the value a little bit up. Let's actually put it to 1.5. And now our ball looks way, way better, which is very good. And don't forget to save. Again, I pressed save by mistake, but it's fine. Okay, and now we have the ball. And actually, we know that when the ball hits, which is going to happen anytime now, it will distort and then go right back up, which is good, right? It's fine. It's exactly what we needed to do. However, though, let's go back to the beginning. There are two things that I do like in anime, and that is the way that they depict that speed, all right? And the way to depict speed in this scene right here, it will be by actually having some lines, right? So let's create some a plane actually. As X to scale it on the X-axis. Let's actually apply the scale. G and Y to actually move it in front of our ball right there, and actually incline it to like maybe a 40, well, minus 45 degrees. Something like this. And for this, we'll actually need the principal BSDF still. And I'll tell you exactly why in just a second. But for now, let's actually get a wave texture again. Ctrl T to actually bring our mapping and texture coordinate. And of course, a color ramp to be able to set this to constant, because that's the way we need it. Let's bring the Y color all the way mostly up, because we need very thin lines in this case. And also let's modify the Z-axis to like a 45 degree, well no, a 90 degree angle, because the rotation is already 45 degrees and that helps us. And you can increase the number of lines if you want, or just the thickness of them to actually be a little more prominent in our scene. Now, the reason we needed our principal BSDF is because we actually need to see only the lines, not the whole plane. And to do that, we will use our alpha right here, right? But for that, first, we will actually need an invert color node. And then plug this into the alpha. And nothing seems to have changed. And of course, I pressed save again. But to see the change, you can actually go into the actual, what's it called? Render view, render preview mode. And actually, you can see that this works, but instead of going into the factorial, so from the color ramp, you need to actually go to the color, and now we can only see the lines. And actually, we should also have a little bit of a light. And I actually found out that Blender Kit has a really cool HDRI, which you can find by pressing Gym. And, you know, you'll find a lot of other stuff that you can use. I chose this one right here. I think it's pretty fitting to exactly the type of scene we're working with. And now we can actually see our bowl that goes right through. Now, as you can see, the light does affect a little bit our lines here, and we don't want that. Just put the roughness all the way up, and now they will be completely black, which is pretty fine for me. And now we need something to work with. We need a gradient texture. And that is because I don't want the lines to be all the way up for this bowl. I want it to kind of be disconnected in some way. So basically just kind of be behind the bowl, like around here. And to do this, we'll actually get a gradient texture and set it to spherical. And another color ramp, of course, that will be constant. And let's look at it. And as you can see, we can see it right here, but it's actually pretty shy. So actually, let's bring it a little more up, kind of like this. And also, for some reason, it's a little bit distorted. So let's actually increase the X scale to apparently like a 3. And then move it again to see where we need it to be. And then just play around with the scale so that it actually fits our scene the way we need it. And we can actually, let's pull this back a little bit. We can actually take a mix color node. Again, of course. And actually, not here, but to the invert color. Just set this to alpha, set this to the factorial, and then this to a black value, and you can actually see our bowl that has the circular part that we actually want. But of course, this is not all that we want. We actually need another gradient texture that is going to be set to linear. We will need another color ramp that is going to be constant again, but this time we actually should be reversing our colors, and you'll see why in just a second. And another mix color that will actually mix our two gradient textures. But the thing is, we don't need it to combine them like this. We actually need them, we need this to be the factorial, and then this color to actually be the white color that will drive this. And now we can also play with this scale to actually fill everything up, kind of like this. And then we have a semicircular side right here, which is perfect because that will mean that once we will get this to the factorial, this will change the whole scene entirely, right? So as you can see, now this whole thing actually works in our favor. And now we can just move this a little bit, kind of like this, which is super fine. And to also, you know, create some movement for our lines right here, we can actually play with a phase, and this will create like a movement that the bowl is actually, you know, moving, and it's fine. But also, there's one more thing that we need to make sure we do. And for that, we actually need the timeline tab to be here. Because we already know when the bowl will be distorted and whatnot, right? So we know the bowl goes like this. So at frame 90, we know that it has to stay still like a bowl, which is pretty fine. But that also means that basically our lines have to follow. So to do that, we could just move it like this, like there's no tomorrow. But as you can see, this might look pretty weird, right? So at some point it even goes a little bit into the bowl for some reason, and we don't really want that. Let me actually just delete these keyframes. Now, what we do want to do is at frame 90, we actually need to make sure that this whole scene goes a little better. So let me actually try to copy a little better the trajectory of our ball, something like this. We can also, scale this if we need to. And so this will move somewhat like this. And until frame 90 right here. Let's see if this actually works. And again, it doesn't. So yeah, I tried to make this a little easier than I previously did, but of course it's not gonna work. And there is a way to actually get around this. Well, there are a few ways really to get around this. So to do that, what we will need to do is actually animate this X position, right? So to animate this, just hover over it with your mouse and say put an insert keyframe, which is good. And now we can actually see the keyframes. And as you can see, actually, this is not perfectly fine because it does interact with our ball, which is not something we want. This is more like it. So we'll have it like this. And then at frame 90, right here, we will need to bring the ball, to bring the X all the way up there. But as you can see, we cannot really be doing that because of this gradient texture, which actually will not allow us to do so. But if we actually move its X as well, that will work. But first, don't forget, we need to actually insert a keyframe here for it as well. Then go to frame 90. And here we will need to play with the X position, X location of both of our gradients to actually make it work. You can put this all the way up, so to 0.58 for me it works. And then this one, you can just play around with it till it actually works for us. And now, as you can see, I'm actually going to scale this up a little bit. And make it somewhat like this. Maybe also scale this spherical gradient texture a little more. Okay, and now we can actually go with this even a little closer, something like this. This should work, right? So this will actually follow the ball almost perfectly fine until actually here. If you see this, this is not good. This is actually interacting already with our ball, which is not something we want. So actually, let's make sure that we, define this pretty well, that it cannot be doing that. It has to stay always behind it. So let's actually set this somewhere like this. And then this will actually disappear. Now to make it disappear, we will actually need to work on this circle, on this, let's actually call it speed lines. And with this name right here, we actually just need to insert a keyframe, but this is at frame 120, which is not good. So let's go back to frame 1 and insert a keyframe here. And then at frame 90, this can actually still, actually no, we will just disable it. And then this will hit the floor. And here's one more thing we want to do. Because if I bring back the reference, look at that. I want to recreate also some little air that will go around our ball because that will give it even more impact, right? That will show like, yeah, that was a serious throw. And for that, I will actually create a circle. Now get the circle up like this, S, Shift Z, and go into edit mode, E, Z, get it all the way down like this. Just make sure you kind of cover all the ball, and you'll see why in just a second. Shade it smooth, and for now we're good. Now what we need to do, so let me actually just call this air, and I'm going to call it here as well. First thing that I will want to do is actually find a principled BSDF. And yes, we will still use the principled BSDF for this one as well. We will actually use a noise texture for this one, with Ctrl T, of course, to bring the mapping and the coordinate texture. And now we can actually play around with it a little bit, but just after we put the color ramp in. And of course, this will be set to constant. And this will look something like this. We can, of course, play around with our with our scale. And also, I do want to play with the distortion. So I'll put a distortion of 0.75 and set this to 4D, because that way we can actually play with a seed as well, right? Now, of course, it depends on how you want to do this. This is pretty good for me. And now we can actually try to set this to the alpha. And as you can see, it works perfectly fine already, which is good. That's kind of what we want. However, being air, we don't want it to be all the way, not being able to look through it. So we'll actually put a transmission not all the way up, but actually to like a 0.65 or something. We want to see somewhat through it, actually 0.75. Maybe. Yeah, this looks a little better. Okay, and now you can actually see that the air is stopping at some very precise point, which I don't really like. The reason is, well, actually pretty simple. It's very obvious. So get another gradient texture. We really worked with a lot of those lately, didn't we? And a color ramp. Put it right in. And let us see what we get. So Ctrl Shift left click to see. We will actually need to change the position of this. So let's get this to 90. And just change the colors. And let's actually insert another value right here. So we just need to create a more natural, a more natural way for this to actually go into the principled BSDF. So to do that, it's, well, pretty obvious what we have to do. We just kind of need to get, let me get this, set this to white. And put this into the principled BSDF is alpha. Alright, so connect the color ramp to the B slot here, and in the A slot, just set it all the way to black. And to actually play around with it a little more, you can just fade this a little bit from here. And actually, I don't really like the transmission to be this high. Let me actually put it to like a 0.5. Yeah. Somewhat transmissive, but not that much. And this looks good. This looks pretty okay already. However, don't forget to save again. Let's press a Ctrl-2 to bring, of course, a subdivision surface. And the reason we do this, we'll actually go into edit mode and also subdivide this 10 times. And that's a lot of geometry brought in because we're actually going to displace this. Yes, just like we did before, we need to displace it again with clouds. And this time we can actually make it even a little more violent. to like make it seem super violent, and like the air is extremely rough because of what they did. And this is how this will look, and I think that actually looks pretty great. Again, don't forget to save. I'll keep pressing on that by mistake, so I'm sorry for that. And here's the deal. Again, we cannot show this all the time, right? So the air will actually have to be, unrendered for most of the time, at least until the frame 120, but I'm actually going to let it show just before. So just before hitting the floor, the air will show up, and then until frame 140, I will actually do some magic with it, which is, again, play with the location of our noise here. So insert a keyframe here, and at frame 140, go with this kind of crazy, actually, let's put it to 5. So we can actually see the movement. That actually might be a little too much, so let's put it to like 1. Let's see how this will do. And then the ball will just go on its way, and it's gonna be fine. And after frame 140, at 141, we will actually not be able to see it ever again. So this will have to go. Now, I have all this. There's maybe one more thing we have to do, which is, well, first of all, the camera, but also the floor. We did not touch the floor yet. So let's actually create a material for the floor. This will be with a principal BSDF as well. Or actually, no, we'll use the Toon. You know what? I like the Toon BSDF a lot. So use that. Use a brick texture. And yes, there's a brick texture in Blender for, well, bricks, but also for some other stuff. And you will see it now what. Let's actually change the width, so it actually looks a little more like, gym floor. And that looks pretty good to me. Play a little bit maybe with the scale. So like a 7 should work for me here. And then, of course, let's color it. Being an anime, everything will be a little bit, very colorful. Let's make this kind of the same color and just make some a little darker, right? So that it does have a little bit of a division there. And here, 0.005 worked really good for me. Make the distance between these blanks actually very small, but it looks pretty interesting. And now, of course, save again. And let's introduce also an images planes. And actually, the reason we need it is to have a background crowd, because otherwise it kind of looks weird. Like, who are we playing for? No one. And we will have it right here. But here are two things that I want to show you, and this is why I wanted to do it this way. First things first. I will have one thing that I will want to do. So first, in shader editor, change from object to world. And here you can see the HDRI that we have right now, the one from Blender Kit with the gym. And here is the strength, and I'm actually going to set this to a 0.5. And the reason for it is because I want to add a light, a spotlight to be more precise, right above the ball here. But actually I'm going to set it a little bit on the side. So G, Shift, Z, and move it kinda there. Then put it right towards the ball. And actually, let's see. So first things first, we want this light to be pretty sharp. So the power also needs to be pretty strong for us to be able to see it. And here it actually is. We can actually see the ball. We can actually see everything we need. There's something interrupting this. Let me see. First, though, there's a problem. You can see shadows from the lines and from the air, which, if you know lines and air in anime, there are no shadows for that. Now that is pretty easy to do. Just go to visibility, so to the object properties here, to visibility, ray visibility, and deselect the shadow for both of them. So basically there will be no shadow created by the two of these. And now I only have to understand why this light is blocked, because it shouldn't. Let me actually delete the spotlight and try to put one more. Maybe the spotlight itself was the problem? Because otherwise I really cannot get it. Yeah, okay, so this one actually works pretty fine. So it was the spotlight itself. Huh. Would have known. But the reason I want to do this, in case you're wondering, it's mostly because I want to give it a little bit of that gravitas, of like that importance. Oh, the radius was too much. Okay. Situation solved. And let us have this, right? So this will be able to be seen perfectly fine. And we will see this. And that is pretty cool. I think this still adds yeah, that was still adding animation there. It's not something we want. All right, that actually looks super good. And now for this background image, because, well, first, actually, let me get the camera, because there's one more thing we didn't do yet, which is to actually set up, where is it? Where's the camera? Here's the camera. Gen Y, and now let's look at our scene. Let's get this a little bit up, somewhere like this. And actually, we'll need the plane to be bigger. Apply the scale, and if you ask me, we should also probably increase the scale a little more. So maybe a 9.5 works. Does it work? It works perfectly fine. We're good. So about the scene in the back here, actually, let me check that out. And I did solve it with a little bit of color contrast, right? So just by, well, first, I think it's a little too big of an image. So actually, let's make it kind of like this. Okay. Let me see how it looks from the camera perspective. Yeah, we don't need it to be perfect. The contrast, not too much. 0.1 in the worst case, like don't go crazy with it. And then brightness, very little brightness. Okay, also you can put some gamma in there to actually create a more interesting view. A 1.5 works pretty fine for me. And let's actually see again the animation. And I think, wait, the auto, didn't I? Yeah. So this shouldn't happen. So let us set this again. All right. So let us see the animation. And actually, let me use the denoise and set this to like a 100. Okay, so the animation actually looks pretty cool. And yeah, this is kind of it. Now, of course, we can actually add a little more thing to it, which is the compositor. So at the compositor, set this to always. Let's change this to compositor here. Use the nodes. And actually, we can just set this, right? So having this, there's actually not that much you can do about it in this case, right? Because this is not, you cannot use lens filters or something like that because it's an anime kind of look. So usually color correction is the most you can do. And I do like for this to be a little more saturated than it usually would be. So 1.35, actually maybe less in this case, 1.2. So like really, you know, have your colors pop up. And don't forget to save again. Apparently I keep doing that. And yeah, this looks actually pretty good. And now, of course, you can, you know, then play around with stuff if you really wanna do more than this. But actually, I think this is more than fine. Hello, me from the future. So actually, there is one more little thing that I did do afterwards. Actually, two more things. One that you will not see in the final product because this is like literally today when I'm editing. Well, first things first, I went into the shading. And basically what I did at the constant color ramp, the one that I can actually show you, there are gonna be a little more notes, so don't get scared by those. They don't mean a thing. And I'm actually looking at the air, sorry. So actually I divided this color ramp, so I just duplicated it once more. So this one, it gives me the color, this one gives me the transparency. The reason I did that is because by playing with this white color, like where it will sit, you can create that little shadowish kind of, you know, drawing with a pencil kind of vibe, which actually helps us a lot with the, you know, anime kind of look, which I really liked. And also one more thing I did do, again, let me actually set this back. What I did is when the ball actually hits the floor, as you can see, the air will actually expand. And I did this with, maybe you actually can guess it, the shape keys, of course. It's exactly the same process we used. So that's actually a pretty good homework for you guys to try and do. So basically you have all the weapons now, so fight the fight. Okay, so that's kind of it. So now we can actually go back to the outro. So ending with this great shot right here. Thank you guys so much for actually sticking around till the end of this video. And yes, I do know this is not exactly a perfect, you know, scene, but again, I did work for just like an hour and a half or something like that. Well, edited probably it's a little less, but you got the point. Like, this is super fast and with very basic knowledge. Again, it's just shape keys and just modifying a little bit of geometry, and still I think we got a pretty decent shot in. And we will actually edit that shot a little more in the near future for some other tutorials, and you'll see what I'm talking about when we get there. But up until then, I just want to thank you guys again for you know, sticking around on this channel and for following up these videos. And again, thank you so much for your support and for your well, likes and shares and subscribes and all that. So thank you so much and have a great day. Bye guys.